What's up guys, this is OS Ginger, and we're showing you how to modify your car for playground games events. So, the thing you need to be thinking about the whole time is that in a playground games event, every single game circulates around colliding or not colliding with a vehicle. If you think about it, zombies, you've got to hit vehicles or avoid them. King, I think it's called, you've got to hit vehicles or avoid them. Capture the flag, you've got to avoid vehicles and score a flag, and hit vehicles to stop them from scoring a flag. So every single game is based off crash or not crash. So you need to send to your tuning around that idea. So starting off with conversion. Now I personally would recommend that all-wheel drive is the best idea for this thing, unless you're in a very lower league and all-wheel drive is 2 PI expensive. If you're in a low league and all-wheel drive is unnecessary, or it's weighing your car down too much compared to the low amount of horsepower you've got, you don't need it. Front-wheel drive can also be quite good because it's quite responsive at lower speeds. On certain maps like the runway playground games, you can get away with using rear wheel drive. I've done it myself. Rear wheel drive can be great off road sometimes, but only in really low leagues like C, D, stuff like that. Anyway, so yeah, generally I'd recommend all wheel drive. Front wheel drive can work. Rear wheel drive can work in lower leagues, so can front wheel drive. Going on to engine swaps, don't do this unless you want to get into too high of a PI range. Same with aspiration. Sometimes it can be PI effective to buy the centrifugal supercharger. So now starting off with Aero. Front Aero can be useful, but it's often quite PI expensive. Maybe not on a lower league car like this, but you can go for it if you'd like to. It can really improve responsiveness. I definitely recommend it on a map like Runway. However, on a map when you're not going that fast, you can't really make use of your front aero, so it might just be costing you PI. Obviously, if it's PI, if it reduces your PI, I'd always go for it. Rear wing, I'd always go for it if it reduces your PI, like here, it takes it down by 1. This will allow you to adjust your rear wing settings. You can also get other sorts of wings, but these ones don't provide much downforce, so I wouldn't recommend them. Other things like bumpers, these never really matter in the game. Just go with whatever you want. The side skirts, again, the minus 1% drag might be useful on like runway, but other than that I wouldn't bother. And then hood, just go with whatever you think looks best. Now tyres and rims. The thing with tyres is on a lower PI car like C or D, you don't need to really upgrade the tyres because your engine, you've already got a decent quantity of grip. However, on a map like Runway, I'd recommend using a rally tyre compound. And then on a map, and then basically on any other map, I'd recommend using an off-road tyre compound, unless it's quite PI expensive. You see here, say I want to build my car for C-Class, I can't use it, I'll just use my stock tyres. There's generally never a reason to use any sort of upgraded road tyres, as they're just too PI expensive for this sort of race. Now, tyre width, I can quite honestly recommend this in this situation. Always go for a rear tyre width, because it basically never increases your PI. As you see, it reduces it here, and it gives you more rear grip. Grip is really important to avoid other cars. Front tyre width, really important, helps you avoid other cars. However, front tyre width is not always the most PI efficient thing to buy. Now, the rim size, front rim width or rim size can increase responsiveness. However, the issue with these increasing your rim width too much is it decreases your grip off road. So I'm not really sure if you should use this really ever. Maybe on the runway map you might want to step it up a bit if your car has particularly large tyres compared to rims. Obviously, we'll go for the spacers. Your car looks better, especially front spacers that can really increase your grip. Well, it actually spreads your centre of gravity out so you can turn quicker. Now, clutch. If you play with manual with clutch, don't upgrade this because your clutch speed on a manual with clutch depends on how quickly you can clutch. This is for automatic and manual players. I generally go for this unless it's too PI expensive. Often shift time can actually be a lot better than engine mods. It can actually help your increase of speed better than engine mods can. Transmission, now this is always just, is it PI expensive? So a lot of the time, a sport transmission is sufficient because it allows you to tune final drive. Sometimes you can go for a race transmission if it's not too PI expensive. If it's really PI expensive, the ability to adjust your gear ratio isn't really necessary. Driveline, do this at the end if you need to get yourself in that into that last point or whatever. You can go. I'd never recommend the off-road diff. I'd say for everything rally diff, obviously it doesn't matter because you're going to tune it afterwards anyway. Brakes, just upgrade your brakes if you find your car can't lock up the wheels instantly. If the friction and grip of the wheel exceeds the braking force, then obviously upgrade the brakes, but otherwise you don't need to bother. As for suspension, always the off-road springs, anti-roll bars. Actually, one thing I can note with suspension is you can use the drift if you want the extra turning. That could actually be quite useful. I find this works sometimes, but a lot of the time the extra turning from the drift suspension is almost useless at any reasonable speed. So maybe if you're in a very lowly car, drift suspension can be useful. However, here it's more PI expensive, so I don't know if it's worth it. Obviously, you're going to have to tune that to a more off-road thing because the drift suspension is not good for off-roading. Anyway, as for anti-roll bars, you can go for, I'd always go for race heads. Generally never costs anything. Chassis reinforcement and roll cage. If you're stepping up through PI classes, you can often put this. Just bear in mind what it says here. If it's making you accelerate, turn, and everything faster, then of course I can recommend it. However, here it's only increasing us by a little bit, and it decreases our acceleration by a lot. So maybe something like the first one could be quite beneficial, or something like that. But generally, I'd only do this if you're stepping up through PI classes, not remaining in the same PI class. Weight reduction, always max out if possible. Weight reduction gives you better acceleration, cornering, basically everything except top speed, and top speed isn't really necessary in playground games because the arenas aren't that big. As for engine, normal prioritise mods. I like to prioritise the camshaft. Exhaust is quite useful and it makes your car sound good. I can't remember the name of it. It's called an intake manifold. You probably want to upgrade that as well. I'd avoid stuff like ignition till right at the end if you need more power. Turbo I'd avoid right until the end because it adds a lot of weight, and weight is really not your best friend when it's a handling based game. Flywheel do right at the end if you need the extra PI. This is my favourite little extra PI upgrade. It can increase the responsiveness of acceleration. These two I'd almost certainly avoid. They increase weight massively and barely increase. If you look at this, it increases your power by 8, and it increases your weight by about, I think that's about £20. So I really wouldn't go for that. As for the others, just do them if you need more power. That's about all I can say for the modifications window. I'm going to go to the tuning window now. As for differential, centre, I generally keep it around 50 to keep the car balanced, except on runway, you can probably go for about 60. Rear, now these just tune it as normal as you would for off-roading. However, I'd keep the front I always keep the differential decelerations on 0. I personally don't feel a need for deceleration lock. However, acceleration, I'd put it generally lower than you would for racing because this allows you to turn a bit faster. It won't allow you to put as much power down, but putting power down isn't always the biggest priority in the playground games missions. So braking force, balance and pressure, I'd never worry about these. Just do it to your personal preferences. Really just how the player wants their brakes to feel. Aero, max out all front as always. Rear, max out as accordingly. If your car's oversteering, keep increasing the rear aero. Don't increase it if your car isn't oversteering at any reasonable speed. If you've got a rear-wheel drive car, you might want to increase the rear aero just because it helps your back wheels grip faster, but you're probably not going to be able to use a rear-wheel drive car that's actually struggling with grip in playground games. As for damping, you've got rebound, front and rear. Now just tune these damping springs and anti-roll bars as you would for any other rally or off-road thing. So anti-roll bars low, springs softer generally, ride height higher generally. As for damping, as far as I know, for off-road, you generally want a bit softer. But anyway, and then as for alignment, tune it as according to your normal alignment. I'm not going to tell you guys how to tune your car because I'm not good at explaining it. There's better guys on YouTube like Hokey Hoshi's and SP3's guide on tuning these sorts of things. The two things I'm going to go over is tyres. Your tyres need to be as soft as possible to grip, but not to the point where the rim is touching the ground and the tyre's bottoming. So check in your tuning window if your tyre's bottoming. I'll show you how to do that in a second. As for gearing, you should probably run the longest distance you can across the arena and then if you can't hit the top speed, turn your speed down. It's better to have the acceleration and the speed. Bring your speed down until you can't exceed, you can hit your top speed by traversing the arena. You don't need more speed than it takes to traverse the arena, because you'll never be able to use it. I'm going to show you now how your tyres work in the tuning menu. So for me it's T on the keyboard. I've got my wheel to the side at the moment, so I can't use that. So I'm just going to show you with the keyboard. But if you go here and then go to the friction window, you see the green line. That's how much of a contact patch there is. When it goes red and goes really wide, that is because your tyre's bottoming out. If you look there, my tyres are a bit hard right now. They're not bottoming out very often at all, so you can probably drop it a lot down from this. Then again, this car's a little bit road centered with its tyre tuning stock, but yeah. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope this helped, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.